Board members, Deanne Hines, Malia Lewis, and I think I saw Jim Posh as well. So I think we'll get started. We're going to have a busy agenda tonight. So welcome to the Cleveland Heights Democrats Club. Tonight we're having
Linda, you muted yourself somehow.
I'm going to start over.
Oh, there
That was
Welcome,
me.
everyone.
That was me. Just if people in the group could mute themselves so you don't have any background noise. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Tonight we're having our endorsement meeting for mayoral candidates. And we're also having a candidate forum and endorsement meeting for the candidates who are running for the unexpired seat that was opened up when Mary Dunbar resigned from City Council recently. And then finally, for our club's membership, we will have a vote on our nominating committee. We have election of officers and trustees coming up. So it would be great if we could all be together in person, but given the continuing COVID issues, we need to be satisfied with seeing each other on our Zoom screens. So thanks for being with us tonight for this important meeting. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to the screening committee and to all of you for participating in our endorsement process. The screening committee this year is Sue Dyke, Jen Holland, Steve Ingalls, Rob Rivera, Julian Rogers, and Maria Wilkinson. Sue is doing Zoom host duties, and Steve is our timekeeper tonight, and Maria Wilkinson is going to be monitoring the chat when we get to the point of questions. So we've had a really busy endorsement season, as you all know. So the committee's had a lot of work on their plates, and we really appreciate all their hard work in our many endorsement meetings. So please join me in thanking the committee. And we also thank you for your interest in electing Democrats in Cleveland Heights. This election is very important for our city, so we appreciate you all being here. Before we start on the candidate part of the meeting, I have a few other quick points. For your ballot in November, I want to remind you that we have endorsed for City Council Davita Russell and Tony Kuda. We also have endorsed for school board Mario Clopton-Zimler, Dan Hines, Malia Lewis, and Jody Serini. There are 3 seats open on the school board. Those 4 folks, of course, are Democrats. There are also 3 other people running who are not truly supporters of public schools. So we hope you will support Democratic candidates for your slots on your ballot for school board. We want to thank Jim Posh again for the great presentation he gave us the other night on the status of school funding in Ohio. And I think in talking to some folks, there's probably a good reason for us at a later date to have a meeting that will be devoted perhaps to a bigger discussion about school funding with some information about the history in our state, the sorrowful history of the unconstitutional school funding in our state, but we'll do that another day. So I believe I saw Judge Vaudrey come on, so welcome. Now, speaking of the November election, we all need to work on increasing voter turnout for our city, and we encourage you all to vote in the general election and to talk to your family and friends and your neighbors about voting. We didn't have a very good turnout for the primary, and we really need to do better for the general election. So we hope that you'll talk this up and get more people out to the polls. I want to mention that on October 19th, we're going to have a social event outside at Boss Dog. This will give our members a chance to see each other and to talk to Democratic candidates for Cleveland Heights public offices and find out more about their campaigns. It's a social event, no speeches. Hope it'll be fun. And we will drop a registration link in the chat at some point tonight. And we've been circulating that in our email. So we hope that you'll sign up ahead of time, so we'll have some rough idea of how much food we should order. I also want to mention real quick that the high school PTA is sponsoring a school board forum that's going to consist of high school students asking questions of our school board candidates. So that's going to be on October 21st. And yeah, again, there's going to be information dropped in the chat about that. So that's, of course, a nonpartisan event, but it would be great if you could participate in that remotely to show support for our wonderful high school students and the PTA. Thank you to Jen Holland, who's worked really hard on putting that together. So I'm going to review now our procedure for this evening. We're going to follow our usual endorsement procedure with one difference. Because we had a lengthy candidate forum before the primary for the mayoral candidates, we're going to have a shorter program tonight for the mayoral candidates, and that we'll have a shorter Q&A period. We will have a Q&A period, but it will be shorter. And then we'll have a candidate forum for the city council candidates, which will be, a longer period, but it depends on how many questions folks have. So I hope you all came with some good questions. So that the candidates generally will have 2 minutes for opening statements, and then we'll do our Q&A segment for questions from the members, and then we'll have 1 minute for closing statements. And then once we get to that point for the mayoral candidates, we're going to shift and do the same drill for the city council candidates. And then we're going to have our voting on both races after both sets of candidates have had their chance. I just want to mention that we did require, as usual, that candidates submit answers to our questionnaires, and we did post those and we sent them out. There'll be a link dropped in the chat for those as well, in case you didn't get to see those. And our questions tonight come from our members, including our steering committee members. If any member of the Cleveland Heights Democrats would like to propose a question, please put it in the chat and we will try to fit in questions as time permits. We ask that only members submit questions, please, and that you keep questions short. Once we get past the closing statements for the city council part, so we've had the mayoral candidates and then we've had the city council candidates with their closing statements, we will then limit the Zoom to only members for our customary discussion period. So we'll have a report from our screening committee for their recommendations, and then we'll have a time when members can comment and have some discussion about the endorsements. And then we will limit the Zoom to only voting members, and we will conduct our vote. Once we finish the voting, we will announce our results, and then we will reconvene for our club business to have a quick vote on our nominating committee slate. So I want to review really quickly who's entitled to vote. To be qualified to vote, you have to be a member of the club, which means you're a registered Democrat who lives in Cleveland Heights and you've paid your dues not later than 30 days before this meeting. Renewing members could pay dues up to the time of the meeting. With respect to our vote for an endorsement, our bylaws provide that a candidate has to get a 60% majority to achieve an endorsement. So it's not just a simple majority, it's 60%. And as to each of the races tonight, you can only pick one candidate. So if a candidate in a race, nobody gets 60%, we don't make any endorsement. There's no second ballot. We just do one ballot. Anybody have any questions before we move on? I'm not seeing anybody's hands raised. Just checking real quick through the screens here. Got a lot of screens here. Yeah.
Linda, I sent you a message in the chat. Could you please take a look at it before we get started?
Okay. Sue is asking a question about whether press is allowed on the call. I would say press can stay on the call as long as non-members can stay on the call. So when it's time for non-members to leave, then press would also have to leave. So just so you all know, Regina Brett is on the call. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so moving on to the mayoral endorsement part of the meeting. We have with us this evening Barbara Danforth and Khalil Sarin, who are the two candidates who advanced from the primary to the general election. We picked at random for opening statements, and we'll take turns going from there. Khalil, you won the first up for the opening slot, so please take 2 minutes to make your opening statement.
Thank you. So the reason I'm seeking the endorsement of this club is simple. I've asked for your endorsement because of shared democratic values. Political endorsements are a signal to the voting public that the endorsed candidate cares about the issues they care about and can best represent their concerns while in office. An effective public servant must know where they stand before they can stand up for their brothers and sisters. This club is a collection of individuals who do not always agree, that lean left or right of our democratic center, but we are all active, engaged, vocal, and proud Democrats. I want you to feel confident that voting for me tonight means that you support a strong Democrat leading our city next year. The way I've conducted myself on council for the last 6.5 years proves that I don't back down and don't shy away from difficult conversations. I know that I can deliver on bold and creative solutions to our problems because I have a track record of exactly that. What I've been able to accomplish at the county level in an advisory capacity has not been realized as fully as I would like at the city level, mostly due to the limitations of being one voice, one vote among 7 or 6 on a council divided. But I feel inspired to amplify the voices of the people and not my own. Having that clear and direct connection to the power of the people has me very excited to do the work of a municipal leader, balanced by a strong, reinvigorated council full of new ideas and the necessary support to transform values into law. I want to be a conduit for what really matters. I want to use my knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a positive example of what a younger, Black, educated man can accomplish here at home by never forgetting his own struggles or the struggles of others and staying open to learning and partnering in ways that elevate all of us. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Barbara, you can take down.
Over the past couple of weeks, 2 issues have raised that I want to address first. One concerns my interview with the Cleveland Stonewall Democrats, and the other, my past financial issues. Let me begin with the most painful one, which stems from my interview with the Stonewall Democrats. We can debate about what did or did not occur, but I honestly disclose my considerations in reconciling my position on equal access to restrooms for transgender and non-conforming people, and with more information, determine how I best advocate for the civil rights and quality of life for all of Cleveland Heights residents. I took immediate steps to finalize my position, and I have clearly stated and posted a statement unequivocally supporting equal rights for the LGBTQIA+ community, including access to the restroom choice. I have spent my entire career fighting for equality and fighting against discrimination for all people. And it is an issue that is core to my existence. Now, relative to my financial challenges, I will own the facts, but want to share some content. In 1993, I adopted my daughter as a single mom. When the extent of her special needs became evident, I enrolled her in a therapeutic school. At the same time, I became the executive director of the YWCA of Cleveland, which gave me greater flexibility, but a lower salary, and I began to struggle financially. Then my father died suddenly, and my mother was diagnosed first with cancer and then with Alzheimer's disease. Without a support system, caring for my daughter and my mother created a back-breaking financial burden, resulting in bankruptcy, foreclosures, and tax problems. I am proud to have provided my daughter and my mother with the best possible care and to have paid in full all debts discharged in bankruptcy. While all of this was happening in my personal life, I was restructuring the YWCA and building a strong foundation for its future, such that today it is a thriving organization that continues to empower women and work toward eliminating racism. And that's the type of leadership I will bring to Cleveland Heights as mayor. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm told that Regina Brett is not on this call, just so everyone is aware of that. Okay, so we're going to start off with a question for Barbara and then a different question for Khalil. So the question for Barbara relates to the issue that you just addressed in your opening statement, Barbara, relating to the rights of members of the LGBTQIA+ community. And I think this is something that resonates very deeply with us in Cleveland Heights because we have been a pioneer in advocating for the rights of LGBTQIA+ people and welcoming them in our community. We passed a domestic partnership ordinance early on before it became more widely done. And it's really part of our core values. And I think members of the LGBTQAI+ community and its allies are concerned about the lack of unequivocal support that you had expressed previously. And in light of those reports of qualified support, we feel we need to know where you stand. So while we appreciate your comments tonight, I want you to also understand where we come from. And, we view this as sort of a given in our community, that these are values that we uphold. And we need to know that if you became mayor, you would uphold them enthusiastically and without equivocation.
As I stated, I unequivocally support the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community. But one thing that I am struck with in the role of mayor is the enormity of responsibility in making sure that we maximize life for all of our residents. And we have a very diverse community of residents. And so looking to make sure that I understand all of the communities, I understand the LGBTQIA community, but there's some other communities in the city that I understood less about. So as I was looking and understanding and learning, I wanted to make sure that as mayor, I understand all of our communities. And this whole issue, as it has been raised, reaffirms my platform, my campaign platform around equity and inclusion. We are a city that welcomes all, and we also need to be able to include all in the things that go on in our city and the decisions that are made. And this inclusion doesn't happen organically. It happens intentionally with good leadership, with somebody who has done this work. And when I was the executive director of the YWCA, our mission was, and is now to eliminate racism and empower women. And so I am looking as a mayor to empower all of our residents to bring their best to the table so that we can move our city forward. But unequivocally, I support the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community.
Thank you. Khalil, we have a question for you. Any mayor of Cleveland Heights, but especially the first one, will need to demonstrate strong skills in collaboration and compromise. We have received questions and comments that are along a theme, noting that on city council, you often have taken a solo approach, not seeking co-sponsors for legislation or casting the only no vote on issues before council. Of course, as mayor, you won't have a vote on city council, but would you plan to take a different approach as mayor? You have 2 minutes.
All right, so first I'd like to point something out, and this is after the League of Women Voters forum. I did a little looking and I realized that the statement that I made about getting overwhelming support for, or the vast majority of my legislation that I've proposed receiving support from council, I want to clarify, it's actually every single piece of legislation that I've introduced has passed or is still currently before council. So I'd like to clarify that the work that we do is by its very nature collaborative. We can't do it without the other people that we're working with. Now there is a legislative process, and sometimes that legislative process includes crafting legislation together before it's introduced, and other times it involves introducing something because the people have brought it to you because they trust you to help them craft it and introduce it before council. And then there's a process, a legislative process for council to deliberate, craft amendments, and have a public conversation. And that's the kind of conversation that I'll have as mayor, introducing legislation, sometimes with co-sponsors, sometimes without. And I'd like to also note that we don't have a history in Cleveland Heights of proposing legislation with co-sponsors. In fact, at this point, I think I've co-sponsored something with two things with Davita Russell, Councilwoman Russell, but I'm not sure that we really have a history of co-sponsored legislation. The vast majority of our legislation is presented by the administration. And so as a mayor, I will be empowered to introduce legislation. Sometimes it will be with the collaboration of one or more council members in collaboration with the council president and leadership. I'm interested in having that kind of relationship, but sometimes it will be a situation where the mayor has to veto, or a situation where the mayor introduces something unilaterally and relies on council to deliberate.
Thank you very much. Our next question actually, it ties into what you were saying because it has to do with legislative initiatives. So this is a question that came in from one of our members. Given the extremely slow pace of the progress under our current government, how specifically would you work with City Council to speed up the legislative initiatives? And Barbara, you go first on this one, please. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I would work very closely with council to understand what their legislative objectives are, and then provide the staffing support that they need to make sure that it happens expeditiously. Now, of course, that brings into mind that right now our staff is challenged. There are a number of open positions. And so the staff is often working extremely hard, but I would work closely with the council to make sure that the staff support that they need was made available to them, that right at the outset, we set up a timeline and a plan to move the legislation forward. I'm one who is big on plans and timelines, because as you plan out situations, as you plan out legislation, you can then determine where the priorities are, where other issues need to be addressed. And so with that planning and with those timelines and with careful coordination with staff and the council, I believe we can make this a much more effective and efficient process in moving legislation forward.
Thank you. Khalil?
All right, so first, I would like to point out that the mayor is an executive role, an administrative role. There is a legislative component to that, but I want to focus on the role of the council when we're talking about legislation, because that is the legislative authority of the city. On an interim basis, at the beginning of my administration, I would be glad to, and I've made it public that I will be very happy to provide administrative support for council. But I think that needs to be on an interim basis. The council needs to be an independent and strong partner to the administration. And that means that the council needs to have a policy staff and a clerk staff of its own that it controls, that it can rely on in order to move its own legislative agenda without relying on a mayor who is an independently elected and separate branch of government. So I think that the first step is to help council and support council on an interim basis, and then provide support for council's decision around its own staffing so that we can be a true partnership. When it comes to legislation that's presented from the administration for council's consideration, I think that it's really about information sharing. It's about being as open as possible, both with the public at the very beginnings of concepts and with the council, so that when these things come up for deliberation, people aren't taken aback. People aren't taken by surprise. People understand and have had this conversation over the course of however long it takes before something is introduced. And especially in that relationship with the council leadership and council chairs of committees that are relevant to the legislation, so that when it gets to the deliberative process, it can take a very short amount of time. But I'll tell you, I don't like the idea of quick stepping things. I think that the default should be full 2 readings, regular order, and things that don't need to be passed on emergency shouldn't be.
Thank you. There was an issue that came up in our consideration of the city council candidates that we're going to hear from later tonight regarding how we elect city council members. Some of the candidates' questionnaires raised considering a change in how we elect to use a ward system so that a particular area of the city would elect a city council person as their representative, as opposed to our current system in which all the council people are elected at large. What is your position on electing city council by ward rather than at large? You have 1 minute for this question, and Khalil, you go first this time, please.
All right, well, this will be a quick one. I've been saying for the last probably 5 years or so that a better system, and in my view, an optimal system for Cleveland Heights is a blended system. If we remain at a 7-member council, then I believe that 4 wards and 3 at-large council members will provide sufficient specific representation with smaller areas of our city, combined with that at-large citywide view that is also important on a council to provide the kind of representation that people really need in this city. Expanding the political process and creating more equity, more political equity is one of the reasons why we should do this. It is difficult to run citywide. If you don't have name recognition, it's more difficult. I think we open up the process to more people by creating wards, and I think a blended system would be an optimal choice.
Thank you. Barbara?
Well, I agree. I think a hybrid system is the system that is preferable. And that position has certainly been confirmed by a number of the residents that I have spoken with, because they want to have someone, they want to have one touch point on the council that they can call when they need help with things that are going on in the city. And yet they also want to have council people who are looking at the bigger picture. So I absolutely agree that a hybrid system of 4 at ward and 3 at large council people is a preferable system.
Thank you. We have a question about campaign funding. Before the primary, you responded to our questionnaire about funding, telling us how you were going to fund your campaigns. Would you please update that to let us know whether you have accepted or will accept any PAC money? And if your answer is yes, will you share with us which PACs? Barbara, you can go first.
The only PAC money that I have received is from the Matriots. And that is money of an organization of women who support women in political positions. And so, yes, I have accepted PAC money.
Thank you. Khalil?
As far as I'm aware in this moment, the only money that I've received from a political action committee is from the collective PAC, which is a PAC that was created by a local person, actually a local couple, to build Black political power nationwide.
Thank you. I think there was a question in the chat that was a follow-up on Barbara's comment about financial matters. And the question, as it's stated in the chat, says that public records show that your financial difficulties, including foreclosures, occurred more recently, like in 2019. Do you want to comment on that?
I don't believe that's accurate.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question here that's again in the chat. In your response to the Stonewall questionnaire, when asked if a bakery should be able to deny a same-sex couple a cake, you said as a private business, it shouldn't have to make that cake. Can you please explain how you're comfortable with that discrimination?
Well, I have revised that position. As I explained to the Stonewall Democrats when we had this interview, there was additional information I wanted to gather. I have said that anyone who is in the public sector in doing commerce has a responsibility to provide services to anyone in the general public. Anything short of that is discrimination and illegal. So it is
Thank
the
you.
commerce law that prevails.
Thank you. Rosa?
Hi, yeah, so my question is also for candidate Danforth. So I apologize, I was blocked from your page, so I'm not sure if this is still your statement or if it has been edited. But as of yesterday, in your statement in response to Cleveland Stonewall Dems statement, you said, quote, "I will always be honest with you and I will always listen," end quote. You did not address the allegation that your campaign sent out a statement and claimed it was what you sent to Stonewall Dems, which is not true. It's not what you sent to Stonewall Dems. And I asked in a comment on your status for you to clarify on that allegation, and that comment was deleted and I was blocked from the page. So I'm just wondering how that social media policy and also your sidestepping of the issue of claiming that the statement about LGBTQIA rights that you sent to people when they inquired was the same that you sent to Stonewall, which is untrue. How those two things square with your commitment to be honest and always listen to the people of Cleveland Heights. Thank you.
There have been two statements that have been sent out relative to my position on the LGBTQIA issues. One was sent out as a general statement, a bit of a generic statement, just providing an overall view of where I stand. The one that was sent out earlier this week specifically addressed the Stonewall Democrat interview. So they were addressing essentially the same general topic, but from two very different and distinct perspectives. And what I was trying to do with the most recent one was to address the specific allegations that were raised. I don't believe that they are fundamentally in conflict or philosophically in conflict, in as much as both of them clearly articulate my unequivocal support of the LGBTQIA+ community.
Thank you. Does anybody else have
Linda,
a
I'm
question?
sorry.
Any other member have a question?
I need to follow up on that though, because it did not address my question at all. I'm sorry, just one more moment. So specifically, your team sent a statement, the initial generic one, with the caption, "This was her answer to a questionnaire from the Stonewall Democrats," which was not true. So I'm wondering how that got sent out with the caption that it was what you sent to Stonewall, which is not true. And also you did not address at all deleting comments. I know I'm not the only person whose comments were deleted from your Facebook post. I've talked to many other people today that had that happen. And if anybody's curious, you can go see what the comment count is on the post and how many comments you can see, because you can still see that there were comments that were deleted. So feel free to do that if you haven't been blocked. So if you could please speak to how you can be honest with your constituents and have an open dialogue with us when you're censoring our honest questions about your campaign's activities on your social media posts prior to this election. I'd appreciate it.
Well, I cannot do all things in my campaign. I have not been managing my social media page. I stand by the fact that I have tried to be honest and candid with all of my answers, which is how I've gotten in trouble. Because it has been my practice to be honest with everything I say, even when I know it is not the answer that is expected. But I have worked very hard to gather information, to understand all the information that's available to me, because all of the positions that I want to take, I want them to be database, I want them to be thoughtful, I want them to contain comprehensive information. So I stand on the fact that I work very hard, and I think I've exhibited throughout this campaign my efforts to be honest and candid with every position I take. Now, if there has been some blocking, I'm unaware of that. I will go and check on it in the morning. But I am open to any question that anybody wants to make of me. You can go on my website, you can ask a question, and I do my very best to respond openly, honestly, and candidly, even when I know that you might not like my answer. And that's the way I will be as mayor. There will be many people who do not like everything I have to say. I cannot, as a mayor, please all people at all times, but all the time, I will do my very best, as I have done always in my career, and have realized success from that perspective.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat that's addressed to both candidates. Do you support Black Lives Matter and why? Khalil, it's your turn to go first.
Okay. Black Lives Matter. I mean, that is a true statement. I mean, it is my opinion. I believe that Black lives matter. I believe that my life matters. I believe that my brother's life matters. I believe that my wife's life matters. I believe that my mother's life matters. So yes, Black lives matter. I'm not sure how it's possible that we're discussing this in a Cleveland Heights Democrats meeting. I feel like Black lives mattering to us all is something that we should probably all have in common. At least I hope so.
Thank you. Barbara?
Yes, Black lives matter. And Black lives and Black people need to always be included, need to have all the opportunities, need to have allies in our anti-racism work. Yes, Black lives matter, but Black lives are still being discriminated against. And Black lives need to raise awareness about the day-to-day struggles that Black Americans continue to have. And so this is yet another opportunity in our city of great diversity to bring together Black lives and all other lives so that we can work together hand in hand to make our city better. Yes, Black lives matter, and Black lives are a great asset to this city. And I am looking forward to working with the Black lives and every other life to move our city forward.
Let's see. Michael Bennett, I don't know if you have a question for the candidates or a different question.
That was for the candidates. I didn't know if I should use the chat, but I noticed some people were asking online. So is there a preference? This is my first meeting like this.
Well, you can go ahead and state your question.
Okay. As many of you know, I worked hard on with Citizens Elected Mayor Committee to create this new position. And I'm, bringing in a mayor who would be able to run a large organization, manage a lot of people and a large budget, and most importantly, move initiatives forward that make our city better. I'm wondering what the candidates have picked up during the primary and since the primary until today that will help shape their view of how that they see themselves in this role that has no playbook, no precedent, no history. This is new ground for Cleveland Heights, for the community. And I'd be curious to know how they're going to come into something that never existed before and make it work and accomplish all the goals we set out to when we worked so hard to pass the charter amendment.
Okay, Barbara, I think it's your turn to go first.
Okay. Well, Michael, you're right. It's going to be a really challenging job. It means putting together many moving parts, working closely with the staff. But certainly, I think it's an exciting time. I think that there's many opportunities to do things differently. In the past several years, we've had a lot of rhetoric, and now the residents want some results. And so how do we get results? Well, we have to put it into context of limited budget, limited staff. So how do we maximize the work that needs to be done? Well, we certainly involve our residents. There are so many residents. As I have gone house to house throughout this campaign, I am always appreciative of the level of expertise, the level of interest that our residents have. And when I ask them why they haven't been involved in the city, the answer is pretty much always the same. They've never been asked, they don't know how to do it. Well, as a mayor, that's certainly one of the first things I want to do, to make access to participating in the decisions and the work that is being done in the city, make that access easy. So that's one of many things I want to do. But then I also want to change the communication process. I want to make sure that residents know that in my first term that they will be able to call me directly and have a conversation about their suggestions, about their complaints, about their questions. Again, involving our residents, because the mayor and the city staff are public servants and the residents are our public. And we need to be about the business of fully engaging them in the work of our city as we move forward in this new form of government.
Leo?
Thanks. So I've dedicated my career to public service in government in a particular way. The service that I have given to our community, our county, has had to do with creating and improving systems of government so the government serves the people better, more transparently, and in ways that really address the true problems that we have and take advantage of the opportunities that we face. I've worked my way up in government. I have a stellar reputation based on a long series of successes in local government. And I want to bring that experience and that expertise in local government to Cleveland Heights in order to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. Before the ballot initiative campaign began, I stated before the Charter Review Commission that, in my view, the best of both worlds would be an elected mayor that would be a leader, that would take the people's values and bring them into our local government, take the people's input and priorities and bring them into our local government, coupled with a charter mandated city administrator that would handle management, be an experienced manager in the same way that a city manager might be. But without that leadership piece, that values piece, and that experience in turning values into actual public action, the management piece falters. The management piece doesn't connect. My experience in local government has been experience of taking systems and improving them, creating government departments, massive government programs, implementing them successfully to the benefit of the people that we serve. And I intend to bring that to Cleveland Heights and focus that expertise specifically on the problems and opportunities that we have here. Thanks.
Thank you. Rob, I see that you have a question.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Barbara, hi, everyone. I just need to follow up on that comment earlier because I was in that interview with the Stonewall Democrats with you, and you opened tonight by saying we can debate or there can take issue with what was said, and there isn't an issue with what was written in your questionnaire. And I just want to clarify why you ever thought that discrimination was okay by a private business, because that's what you unequivocally said in the questionnaire. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it says, as a private business, you shouldn't have to be forced to bake the cake. So at some point, you were quite comfortable allowing a private business to discriminate in Cleveland Heights. And I had asked you about that. But now you want us to believe your support is unequivocal. And I'm really struggling with that. I'm really struggling with that because part of the purpose of the interview was to give you a chance to explain the questionnaire, but when you were interviewed, you didn't explain that away. You just kind of doubled down on it. And I guess I'm confused. I'm struggling with your answer tonight that your support is unequivocal when you more than equivocated. You didn't equivocate. You unequivocally said you were okay with discrimination in that questionnaire.
Well, and Rob, if you will recall, I submitted an addendum to my response, and I said I was wrong. I admitted that I was wrong, that I had viewed the case law on it incorrectly. I reviewed the Supreme Court case findings incorrectly. I said I was wrong.
No, but the question wasn't about case law. The question was about what you believed as a person.
Well, and I'm also
not what the Supreme Court believes. What you believed as a person is what the question asked, because we're electing you as a person. And to be clear, the Supreme Court case doesn't really help us here in Ohio, because in Colorado, they have a statewide anti-discrimination law that was being enforced. In Ohio, I do not have that law protecting me. I have county law, maybe, and I have a city ordinance. So that Supreme Court case law is case law, but the club had asked what you believed, and your first response was not to say you don't think discrimination should happen. Your first response was to say you were okay with a private business discriminating. And to say the Supreme Court case is, so it's not telling us what you believed. Your first response was to tell us that you thought they should not have to bake the cake. So tell me how I'm supposed to believe that you're unequivocal in your support for my rights when your first response in a written questionnaire on the record was to say a private business should be allowed to deny me and my husband service.
I actually think that a quality of a good leader is being able to admit and recognize mistakes. And that was a mistake I made, and that was a mistake that I attempted to correct in writing to you. And so I acknowledge that it is. And you said that the Supreme Court, that you were asking for my opinion. Well, as a lawyer, one of the things that informs my opinion is case law. And so I reviewed case law, and that becomes a portion of informing my answer. But good leadership recognizes what she knows and what she doesn't know, and recognizes when a mistake has been made, fixes the mistake, and moves on. And actually, where I hope we can move on is that in this diverse community that we live, that we can all come together in a way of having some intentional conversations to have better understanding about each other. Because it's only through understanding that we're going to be able to work together and move this city forward.
Excuse me, is it possible for me to respond in any way?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I guess I just want to unequivocally say, I've got, I guess, 43 years of experience on this issue. And I just want to point out that I unequivocally support the dignity and human rights and humanity of all of our people. And not only that, but Supreme Court be damned, I will fight for it. And if the Supreme Court disagrees with me, then I will continue to fight for the dignity and human rights of the people that I serve.
Well, then if I can follow up, as if you are saying in opposition to anything I have said, that's not true. I too am fundamentally, my whole career has been built on anti-discrimination, anti-racism, equality, and equity. I have years of work in this area, which is why this whole conversation is particularly painful to me, that I have made an error of communication. I have corrected the error, and I feel as though the apology is not accepted. And that makes me very sad. Grieves me deeply that after 40, 50 years of fighting against discrimination, this is how I'm being condemned tonight.
Does anybody have any other questions before we close this part of our meeting? Okay, we'll move to closing statements. You each have 1 minute. Barbara, you can go first.
Well, let's talk about Cleveland Heights' future and why I'm in this race. I've had 10 years of government experience at the city level, the county level, the state level. And in the city level, I worked in the city of Cleveland and learned how a strong mayor government, how that form works. And I also developed connections. When I was working for the YWCA, I had to raise money. And so I knew resources at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. So this new role as mayor is going to be one that has to be created, but it's going to be an in-facing job that takes care of the services and the concerns of the citizens day by day. And it's out-facing that has the opportunity to.
Somebody has to mute themselves, please. If you're not muted, please mute yourself.
It's you.
Okay, it's an out-facing job that has the ability to bring resources. Not only have I had this experience in city, state, and federal, and state, county government, but I've run organizations, and this is truly a major leadership operation for a $62 million city. And I have run an organization of that size. I have hired people. I have coached staff. I have prepared and managed budgets. But most importantly, I have been held accountable to an organization for its successes. And so I look with great excitement about what can be in our city. We have an opportunity for change. We have an opportunity for results. We are no longer going to look to the past where there was just rhetoric, and we're going to look to the future to get things done. So I invite you to endorse a visionary leader who knows how to get things done. Thank you.
Leo?
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration this evening. I want you all to know that I have been consistent. I've been consistent in my values. I've been consistent in my open, transparent, candid, almost blunt honesty about the reasons behind my decisions. I am constantly in the practice of providing my rationales and letting you in on my thought process. And I will continue to be that way as mayor. My values are in line with Cleveland Heights values, and my experience is in line with the needs of our government as we transition to a new form. I've participated in a government transition before, a much more massive one than the one that we face, but certainly no more important to me. I will take my expertise in government in creating a 21st century government and bring it to Cleveland Heights and lead our city on the right foot on this new journey. I really do appreciate your consideration this evening. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to both of our mayoral candidates. We are going to proceed now to the city council portion of our program. Tonight, we are considering an endorsement for the unexpired term that had been the seat occupied by Mary Dunbar until recently. There are 5 registered Democrats in this race, plus a few candidates who are not registered Democrats. 3 of the Democrats are participating tonight. They are Gary Cantor, Josie Moore, and Eric Silverman. So we're happy to have them with us here tonight. And we're going to start with opening statements. And the order for opening statements is first Eric Silverman, then Josie Moore, and then Gary Cantor. That was chosen at random. So Eric, you can proceed, please. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, for those who don't know me, my name's Eric Silverman. I'm a 40-year resident of Cleveland Heights, second generation graduate. I served on the school board. I was elected to the school board in 93, 97, 2013, and did a 7-year stint on the library board in between those terms. Which brings me to one of the key considerations I think we have with all the change going on is that in January, we will have at least 3, possibly 4, maybe even 5 new members of city council. And I very much believe that one of those new members should have previous experience, which would be myself. In this race, I'm always surprised by this. Of the 6, I have more combined experience than the other 6 candidates in this race. And I think that that's going to be vital moving forward. The 2 of my times on the school board, we were in a transition hiring a new superintendent. So we were in, if you will, a regime change. And I think that experience and knowledge is going to be vital. Another key component from the 19 years of service is a lot of the questionnaires have, what's your plan? What's your plan? And one of the key things I've learned is it's not, you have ideas, but your plan isn't going to happen because you don't have that authority. You have to work with your colleagues to move your agenda and ideas forward. You have to compromise. I'd love it if it was always my way, but you have to be able to work and compromise. And a key component in that is knowing what you can do and what you can't do. So with only 30 seconds left, I'll punt it more to the Q&A. But for me, what I'm looking to do here is I'd love to have the opportunity to work with folks to do the things I think we should have been doing in Cleveland Heights for the last 10, 20, or 30 years. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Josie, you want to go next, please?
So good evening, and thank you, Cleveland Heights Democrats, for being a part of this process to make this important endorsement decision. I am running for city council because I believe in the people of this city. I see creative, engaged, and compassionate residents who want to be a part of making our city what we know it can be. But I also see long-standing processes and structures that stand in the way of meaningful inclusion, productive communication, and real representation. This needs to change. And I am running because I am deeply concerned about the climate crisis. But I also see the incredible opportunity we have in Cleveland Heights to lead the way as a model of what can be done locally to transition our energy system, regenerate our biodiversity, and prepare for a changing world. I am running because I want us to rethink what's possible in Cleveland Heights. With our unique topography and culture of innovation, we have the ingredients to build a diverse, dynamic, and resilient local economy that will increase our city's revenue and enable us to invest in every part of our city. I am ready to work with fellow council members, our mayor and staff, our CDCs, SIDS, nonprofits, and business owners to support and elevate our local economy. I am a member of our Citizens Advisory Committee, which advises on the allocation of community development block grant funds from HUD for low and moderate income communities in our city. And I am a board member of Reaching Heights, an organization that promotes community support for our public schools. I am a collaborator, a problem solver, a communicator. In the next year or so, our city navigates as our city navigates a substantial transition. We need a city council ready to work together with professionalism, civility, and a commitment to compromise and getting things done. I am ready to be a part of a team that moves Cleveland Heights forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary, you can go now, please.
Hi, thanks for taking time out of your day to participate in this endorsement meeting. As most of you probably know by now, I'm Gary Cantor, a good government activist with about 10 years of experience under my belt. I proudly and unhesitatingly voted for Barack Obama for president twice, then Hillary Clinton, and then Joe Biden, my former senator, when I lived in Delaware. I am proudly progressive and proudly a Democrat. I'm running for the remaining 2 years of Mary Dunbar's term. And this race is only being contested because I am a good government activist. The city erroneously issued a press release announcing that city council would appoint someone. And I immediately sent the city the charter language on vacancies that showed the new council member would be decided by a vote of we the people. And in all those 10 years, that may be the first and only time the city's response to me was ever anything other than you're wrong and here's why. While campaigning, and even long before I declared I was running for this office, plenty of people would in some way let me know they didn't care for my, quote, constant criticisms of the city council and school board. I guess there's only one way to be engaged with local government, and being informed and therefore critical and vocal isn't the preferred way. And yet, it's generally accepted that our city council has big problems. It took over a year to appoint Melissa Yaznow's replacement. We have 4 school board challengers, all running on platforms of fiscal restraint and greater transparency. Heck, even the 3 school board incumbents are running with the promise of no new levies for 5 years. So yes, I am and have been critical, and I have been vocal, but I've also been honest and factual, because when you're vocal and critical, you'd better get your facts right. Whether those facts are to anyone's liking or not, and over time, it turns out folks begin to see the point. City council won't get any better with just more of the same. And with this critical mayoral transition, people like me are needed right now. I hope you'll vote to endorse Gary Cantor for the unexpired city council term.
We're going to move on to some other questions now. Generally, you'll have 2 minutes to answer questions, but in some cases there are exceptions, so please listen for the different time periods. We asked in our questionnaire about qualifications to run for this office. To drill down a bit on that, please briefly describe what you bring to this role from your professional experience and what you bring to it from your prior public service experience. You have 2 minutes, and the order on this is first Gary, then Josie, then Eric.
Professionally, I'm an Ohio State University graduate, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. I majored in accounting. In my career, I was an accountant. I worked in finance departments. I worked on very large integrations and upgrades of computer systems, which required great amounts of requirements gathering to make sure that the way the old systems worked would work in the new systems, that nothing was being left, no stone is uncovered. And as an activist, as I just mentioned, I got this race on the ballot. I got to be honest with you. I think that's a heck of an accomplishment. I prevented we the people from being disenfranchised. I think that's pretty good. And it took 10 years of being an activist to know to do that, to be familiar with the charter, to have a sense that maybe what the city put out wasn't right to begin with. That comes from 10 years of activism. And as I mentioned in my opening statements, I've been following the school district, talking about excessive spending. And over time, that's become everybody's platform. I think I'm a thought leader, whether anybody's going to admit that or not.
Thank you. Josie?
Thank you, Linda. So a little bit about my background. I attended the Metropolitan University of Denver. I double majored in English and philosophy. I went to graduate school in Buffalo. That's where I met my husband, and I got my master's in English. I worked in communications for long time, started as editing and moved on to messaging and copywriting and brand work. But I got involved in politics back in 2015. I joined a local group to support Bernie Sanders' campaign, and we quickly created a small grassroots group. We took ownership of 3 congressional districts. He won in all 3. Of course, you know, the larger picture didn't win, of course, but after the election, we didn't want to lose the great organization that we created. So we pivoted to a progressive issues group. And of course, all of these groups sprouted up all over New York. And so we connected with these grassroots group all over New York to create the New York Progressive Action Network. And that was a statewide group that provided a legal and a financial umbrella for all of these small groups to work through and under. And it also gave all of these groups a unified voice at the state level. And once we got that organized and I ran the meeting to get the bylaws passed and officially make it a group, they asked, okay, are you going to be running for executive committee? And I said, I'm moving to Ohio. And so here I am. And upon coming here, I didn't immediately get involved. Instead, I had another baby, but I got involved here. I'm part of the Cleveland Heights Progressives. I joined this, I'm part of the Citizens Advisory Committee, as I mentioned, and Reaching Heights. This work is very important to me, and it's about bringing together different voices to make sure to find compromise and to find solutions that work for everybody. That's what I do in my work, and I'm happy to be a part to try to bring it into City Council.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, I graduated from Miami of Ohio with a BA in political science, also with concentrations in geography and English. The most relevant career experience would be I spent almost 5 years working for a government affairs firm, basically I was a utility player doing a lot of projects, a lot of research, things like that. But the key for experience that I would bring to this role is, again, I go back to 19 years, 12 years on the school board, 7 years on the library board. For 15 years, I ran the Cleveland Heights High School Alumni Foundation as well. The experience from the school board and library board, there's a lot of stuff, the skills and the knowledge that I learned on those positions. It's hard to quantify and qualify that, but all of the things that you're going to be doing as a city councilman, I've done in one capacity or another in those two entities. And the 2 key projects I would look at, and I take a lot of pride with, and I'm sure some people would be critical. I know they're going to be critical, but the work we did on the main library on Lee Road, as well as the renovations of the high school, I'm very proud of them, but I also learned a lot about them, which means questions to ask, things to know about. I learned the hard way from sitting in lots and lots and lots of meetings. And that would be what I'm going to bring to the table on this is that, and also you have to be able to work with your colleagues. You may not agree with them, you may not like them, they may not like you, but you have to work with them because you have to put your issues aside and focus on what's the greater good for the institution.
Thank you very much. As I alluded to earlier in the meeting, some of the questionnaires we got from city council candidates raised the idea of considering a change in how we elect city council members. So we'd like to know your position on electing city council by ward as opposed to at large. You have 1 minute for this question, and the order we're going to go in on this question is first Gary, then Eric, and then Josie.
I believe we should have 7 head-to-head contests for each seat in the 2 different years. And given that we're transitioning to a mayor, I'm not sure that I know what the wards would accomplish. And lastly, by ordinance, all a city council person can do to affect operations of the city is to query a department head. So if a constituent thinks I'm going to be able to do something for that neighborhood, perhaps legislatively, but not because their trash hasn't been picked up.
I'm mixed. On the one hand, because my experience has always been running at large, and I do like the idea of running at large because that means you have to represent everybody. On the other hand, I definitely can see the appeal of a ward system. So I think with the 2 mayoral candidates that suggested of the hybrid system, I think that would be the healthy compromise. I think the question would be if it's 4 at large or 3 at large. So that'd be the compromise. But yeah, I'm always skittish about anything that's going to get you like a machinery or party politics kind of a thing. I'm always a little skittish about that.
Thank you. Josie?
Thank you. I think one of the reasons why our city council for so long was so overrepresented when it comes to the south side of town is because running at large means that you need to have the money, you need to have the free time, you need to know people with money in order to win a citywide election. And as a result, you don't get the people who need representation the most are the people who don't have access to winning a seat on city council. If we have wards, that means that people need to campaign, first of all, in smaller areas. We're going to get a chance of getting people who are blue collar workers. We're going to get single mothers. We're going to get people who really need their voices to be heard on city council. And I think that's very important. I also think it's important because, you know, when every city council member is your city council member, no one is. It's kind of like highlighting an entire page of a book. We need to really try to nurture the sense of constituency. I agree that it should be a hybrid, either 4 and 3 or 5 and 2, with the majority being wards. And I think what that means, we do want people still thinking holistically about the city, but we also want to make sure that they need wards to buy into what they're proposing, and they will need ward members to support them. So thank you.
Thanks very much. With respect to our city charter, it's generally understood that the city charter needs further amendments due to the change to an elected mayor. A couple of the candidates mentioned in their questionnaires assembling another charter review commission. Please tell us whether you think another charter review commission is needed, and if so, what would be the scope? You have 2 minutes for this, and the order is first Josie, then Gary, and then Eric.
I am one of the people who suggested that we should have another charter review commission. First of all, there's just a lot of housekeeping that needs to be done. There were a lot of things that just simply weren't considered when making the amendment for the mayor. As Melody Joy Hart has mentioned, what happens if the mayor is incapacitated? We need a lot of these questions answered, and so that can accomplish that. But I also want to ask the question, is our current city council structure serving the needs of our city well? in our current time, and let the Charter Review Commission do studies and ask people to figure out what the people want and what is the best options. If it's wards, how will those be divided? Where will the boundaries be? And then they can come to City Council with their recommendations, and the City Council can then get the 5 votes to put it on the ballot, to give it to the people to decide, to make the ultimate decision.
Thank you, Gary.
I also included convening a legitimate Charter Review Commission in 2022. The one we had previously clearly did not represent a cross-section of our community in a representative manner. I would put a time limit on the Charter Review Commission, but I would not limit or try to influence the scope. I believe CEM was only able to put very limited conditions on their charter amendment, and that the rest is supposed to have been done over the last 2 years, and it clearly wasn't, sort of to nobody's surprise. So yes, we need a Charter Review Commission, really, so that the city can operate. And convening it in 2022 is actually too late. Like, what's going to happen January 1st?
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, this is probably, we have a high degree of agreement with the 3 of us here this evening. I would say, definitely, I would agree with elements of Gary's criticism, and I would agree with elements of Josie's goals. I think the key issue ends up being, at least for me, because this is my process at least, is what's our timeline? I mean, do you want to start it in January when folks are fresh on the ground? And then how long do you want it to be? I think those would be sort of my 2 primary concerns would be, when do we want to start the ball rolling, and then when would we want to have those results back so they'd be actionable. But yeah, I think it goes without saying. I think that we could definitely, there's enough holes in moving forward, particularly because of the change. I think that's one of the key elements we have going forward is, how is this going to work? Because we have, it's sort of like an IKEA component. You have the basics of it, but where exactly do all the pieces fit in? But I would definitely support the idea.
Okay, thank you. We want to drill down on some economic development priorities. Each of the candidates has taken the opportunity in the questionnaire to identify specific recommendations that are related to economic development. So we have a follow-up question for each candidate, and you'll each have 2 minutes on this. Gary, you're a proponent for a park in the Meadowbrook Lee project. Tell us about your proposal for that.
I'm sorry, you said I have 2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually got into activism in Cleveland Heights by reading the Sun Press with a couple of guys at the Stone Oven. And there was an article that said the city had just purchased Meadowbrook Lee for $30,000, all that property. And the guys are saying, no, they didn't just buy it. I know the gas station owner, blah, blah, blah. And so I did some research, and it turned out that that like an easement type of thing that a bank held about being able to build in whatever the city constructed, that had been bought out for $30,000. And that sort of got me started. And so I started doing public records requests and looking up deed records and finding out that, I don't know, I guess between the city and the federal government, there was like $500,000 invested in cleaning up the area and then buying a couple of the homes on Tullamore. So what was in the paper wasn't very factual at all. And then the city did and then Orlean and Lurie had a presentation. They had a proposal going and a presentation, and they had their report said that they were going to bring in $52 million worth of new economy to the city. And so I started going through the report and bringing it to City Council's attention. And they revised the report twice, and that $52 million figure ended up being more like $3.5 million of new revenue over 12 years. And then the city did a proposal, a request for proposals after that failed. And me and 2 other people We responded to that proposal with a green, sustainable solution, a park, some sort of attraction that's sustainable, something other than retail on the first floor and more apartments. We have vacancies of both in this city. The idea of bringing in tax abated, tax advantaged competitors to the existing people, that doesn't strike me as cricket. So I'm very interested in sustainability. I want sustainability in everything the city does. The recent purchase of police cars was a greatly lost opportunity to do something sustainable. We're Cleveland Heights, we're a nuclear free zone. Let's act like it.
Eric, you had some ideas for redeveloping Center Mayfield. You want to talk about that for a couple minutes?
Yeah, sure. As someone who grew up in Noble and Monticello and walked to the Center Mayfield, so I'm pretty familiar with the intersection. And I worked at the Pick and Pay, which is now the city-owned vacant lot across from the city-owned Hillside Dairy site. In my opinion, when I look at Center Mayfield, I view that as a phenomenal opportunity to add residential options, retail options, office options, because its location, if you recall from the city's master plan committee, there were a lot of talk about the Euclid corridor. Mayfield Road corridor connected to University Circle. Developing that area, in my opinion, has amazing opportunity. Also has the opportunity that we don't see at a lot of the other sites we have developed. There's potential for additional development beyond the scope of just what the city would do. From that location, you've got easy access to University Circle, Progressive and 271, Progressive at 271, and Chagrin 271. I believe it's an opportunity to add housing stock that we don't, or housing options we don't currently have, new opportunities for retail and offices in that neighborhood, and ideally ones that are complementary to the current businesses, elements that are missing. And again, when we go back to all the questionnaires talk about taxes and economic development, it's a phenomenal site, in my opinion, to add to our tax rolls, both from income tax for the city, but also property taxes for the library and for the school district. It's because I grew up there. I view it as it's such a lost opportunity that we haven't done anything. And the city owns the Pick and Pay lot, and it's sitting there empty. I wish they hadn't torn it down. I wish they had cut a deal with the Board of Ed to trade it for Milliken, but that's another story. So thank you.
Thank you. Josie, you noted in your questionnaire that you think we have in Cleveland Heights many commercial sites that are ripe for redevelopment. Please elaborate on your idea for this.
Well, we have 11 commercial districts. I mean, all of them, you can identify places in all of them that could use redevelopment. And of course, this would take a really aggressive approach from our economic development department to be reaching out to developers to find people who want to renovate these buildings. But we really do have an opportunity in our city with so many commercial districts, and also we are a bedroom community, and that means we have a lot of homes, and that means we have a lot of home-based businesses as well that are just simply getting ignored, and home-based businesses feel like they don't count. As someone who runs a home-based business myself, I understand the feeling. But home-based businesses, about 80% or so of all businesses start as home-based business. Amazon did, Apple did, Microsoft did. And so I really want to be embracing our local businesses and really just creating a funnel of mentorship and support and advocacy. And as a council member, I want to hear from business owners. I want to hear what they need from us in terms of revisions to our codes and regulations to make it easier for small and medium-sized businesses to thrive. And so we can really clear a path for them, because we really have the opportunity to create a local and diverse and really dynamic business ecosystem that would also really support a truly walkable city. And when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about walkability, and we're talking about community. All of this is really important for what we want for our city. And so taking a really economic gardening approach to economic development, I think will reap dividends, although it is harder work because it's a different approach than chasing smokestacks.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat for all of the candidates concerning whether they would support pursuing a partnership with Metro Parks to manage Forest Hills, on the theory that Metro Parks does a really great job and has entered into lease arrangements with other communities to run parks within the cities. So for this, why don't we start with Gary?
Yes, I certainly support that because I know of a similar missed opportunity about 10 years ago when Citizens for Oakwood had purchased an option to buy the Oakwood golf course. And this city just wasn't interested. The city wasn't interested in reaching out to Metro Parks to keep Oakwood as a golf course. And then of course, or as a public park. And then of course, Walmart moved there, as everybody knew they would. And the property values at Severance went to heck. And as far as Forest Hill goes, we know the park needs work. And I think that's a great solution if Metro Park is interested.
Eric?
Yeah, I the mark it down. I agree with Gary 100% on this. I think I have a copy of the A.D. Taylor's plan for Forest Hills Park, and you look at what it is now compared to what it was built, and it's just sad. I should say one side's a little sadder than the other, but no, I think the Metro Parks have developed an excellent reputation for their properties as well as managing those from the city of Cleveland. So I think if we could strike an arrangement, I think it would be wonderful. I think the area where it gets probably sticky would then be more, is it the entirety? And obviously we have to have some sort of a carve out for the rec center as well. But I definitely would support that idea.
Josie?
Well, we are unanimous. I would absolutely support the idea. Metro Parks is a nationally acclaimed park system, and we would be lucky to have them take over this park. One of the things that I am very interested in is just improving quality of life, and that includes a multitude of different things, and the quality of our parks and recreation is one of those factors. And if we can get a lift from Metro Parks with one of our parks, let's jump on that opportunity.
Thank you. One more question about economic development. What changes would you propose in the way the city and the city staff approach economic development? You have 2 minutes on this, and the order is Eric, then Josie, then Gary.
Well, I think I would say that we definitely need to have an examination of our staffing model and what we determine to be outcomes for that as well. That would be, and I think I'm going to say that in more of a sweeping general. I think the challenge we're going to have going forward is, and this goes to the bigger dynamic of the mayor, city administrator, and council, is, who's got their foot on the accelerator in regard to that. I think that council needs to be coming up with ideas, and more importantly, holding folks accountable. I think one of the key elements we definitely need to be doing with economic development is there's development going around everywhere, all around Cleveland Heights, all the time, it seems. Then we have a bad rap apparently, and we need to determine why that is, work with developers and say, hey, what do we have to do to get you to work here? If we're offering the land at little to no cost and giving you some significant tax abatement, how come we can't get, and we already own the land too, why can't we get things, what's the problem? And so that would be, that to me, I'm like, hey, what are we doing here? But again, dial it back to who is, with this new dynamic, who's got their hand on the wheel and driving I don't know, you write the analogy, the train or the car, but who's running the show?
I mean, of course, the Economic Development Department will be falling under the purview of our future mayor. And while this is my vision for our city, I hope that our future mayor shares that vision, or at least is closely aligned. What I really want is just to make sure, in order to achieve the kind of local economy that we can have, it really requires everyone working together and everyone really sharing a vision for what we can do in Cleveland Heights. So it would mean our mayor, it would mean our staff, it would mean our council doing what we can legislatively to help. It also requires the help of our CDCs, our SIDS. I would love to see our business owners, and this is something that as a council member, I think I can also try to encourage, get our business owners to create some kind of council, and so that they can speak to council and to the mayor in a more unified voice. But we need artists to help us with placemaking. We need everyone on board. And yes, that includes the mayor. But if the mayor and the council are aligned in our goals for economic development, it would be huge in terms of making things happen.
Thank you. Gary?
I don't want to put pressure on anybody, but when I was attending the CRC meetings 3 or 4 years ago, it was pretty much understood that because we don't have a mayor, we don't get economic development. So starting January 1st, we're going to have a mayor. So in theory, the problem is solved. A little more seriously, economic development can be both residential and commercial. And that takes us into a discussion of our housing stock. And everybody talks about housing as our #1 priority, except that housing doesn't have a dedicated city council committee. So I think we need to have a dedicated housing and schools committee, because schools, property taxes and school reputation directly impact the demand for housing stock. And I looked at the city's org chart last week, and fortunately we have a new economic development director, but so much of what happens regarding our housing stock and our commercial areas, our commercial districts, probably don't fall underneath economic planning. So the organization chart needs to be clarified to show who's responsible. Who has the vision, who's got the boots on the ground, who's got the carrot, who's got the stick, who's reaching out to communicate to the citizens. I still don't know how Top of the Hill went from 5 stories to 10 stories. Everybody says, oh, those hearings were open, the community was involved, but I talked to some people who paid very close attention. And somehow it happened, 5 stories to 10 stories. And I think the people in the Buckingham were not served well. So if economic development means taking advantage of my existing neighbors, I have some doubts about that. And everything has to be through the vision and the lens of sustainability. If we're not sustainable, we are unsustainable. And the only question is, when does that become a problem? Thank you.
Okay, we have a few questions now that relate to our schools. Even though this is for a city council seat, I think there's increased recognition that the success of our city is intertwined with the success of our school district, and the strength of the school district is critically important to the strength of the city. What would you propose to do to strengthen the working relationship between the city and the school district? You have 2 minutes, and the order on this is Josie, then Eric, then Gary.
Okay, thank you. I partially agree with Gary that we should have a committee focusing on schools. I don't think we should attach housing to that. Housing should have its own committee. But we absolutely need a strong working relationship, not just because the schools affect our property values, but also because the success of our schools has a ripple effect on so many things in our city, including economic development, wages, civic engagement, crime levels. All of these things correlate with the quality of our schools. So our city council really needs to be working in a mutually supportive role with our school board. But I would also like to see our private schools working with that schools committee as well. I think that our private schools and our public schools need to be in more conversation. There is a lot of conflict that was really spurred on by what the state did to us in terms of vouchers. And I think that beginning to kind of build bridges, rebuild the bridges, is to get them in conversation and really talking about, because it is the quality of all of our schools. And of course, the dominant player in that is our public schools. But we need all of our schools to be thriving, and our city needs to be asking questions like, how can we support you? And how can we make sure that you have the resources you need to serve your particular students, to serve the families in your schools, to serve the surrounding communities? What can we be doing to make sure that you have what you need? And so that's what I would like to see the schools committee doing.
Eric?
Instead, I won't do a recitation of past history in regard to that, but what I will say, I think first and foremost, the city has, and this I will say, I think the city has been less than a good supporter. I'm going back much more historically in marketing the community, marketing the schools, saying move to Cleveland Heights and use the public schools. I think that you have to say that, because a lot of other communities, they love to do that. We have been less than ideal with that. I think another component, and I don't want to drudge up history, but when you're doing a development project, you bring the school board in at the beginning. If you're going to need them for tax abatement, which I despise tax abatement, but you're going to have some sort of incentive, bring them in early as opposed to at the end where you try to triangulate. So basically it makes like, if the school board doesn't sign off on the project, it's not going to happen. Another area which I think is, I've been felt this for years, is you need to not only market for folks to move to Cleveland Heights, but then you need to emphasize at key decision points in their home ownership, and if they have children, school age life cycle, because a lot of times people will buy a house at 7 years, they own it, their kids 4 or 5 years old, maybe they're going to consider relocating, or they're going to downsize as well. We need to emphasize, hey, you bought your first home in Cleveland Heights, hopefully we got you, and then buy your second home in Cleveland Heights. And another component in that regard goes to the issue of housing or rental units, because it used to be Coventry and Cedar Fairmount and Shaker Square where if you're a 20-something, where you're going to rent. Now there's a whole lot of interesting options. We need to continue to make that housing stock, those rental units, desirable to that market so we can continue to get those folks. And we want them to live, to rent, then we want them to buy, and ideally we want them to stay. That again, because ideally they're using the public schools, and that builds support. So I think I'm out of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
Well, you know, I have recommended that we create a specific housing and schools committee. But first, I do need to point out that we do elect a school board who runs, you know, who's in charge of the well-being of the school. And it's not a city function. So anything would simply be cooperative or collaborative. I'd also like to point out that we have over 2,200 voters in Cleveland Heights who live in the East Cleveland School District. And, you know, they're the same, they're residents and voters and homeowners the same as anybody else. And I think it's important that we include those residents, their interests in discussions of our public schools in Cleveland Heights. We also have a number of private schools and parochial schools. I don't know that we have any charter schools here, but we have a real diversity of education choices here in Cleveland Heights. And I think it's important not to pick sides, not to, not to scapegoat anybody. As far as, Cleveland Heights is a great area. I graduated from Heights High in '75. Both my older sisters graduated from Heights High. My mom graduated from Heights High. I volunteered on the Levy campaign in 2011. I did some spreadsheet work under the tutelage of Jim Posh. So I'm a big supporter of the Cleveland Heights schools. I just think that city council and the school board, or whoever they designate, need to work collaboratively to identify issues and get out in front of them and become, so that it becomes a selling point rather than what it is today.
So we have a question that came up in the chat for Gary, and the question is, why are you supporting the current GOP candidates who are running for the school board? If you're seeking the Democratic endorsement, as a Democrat, our values are to support public education for all.
Yeah, I've worked real closely with some of those people. I admire their brilliance. I admire how hard they work in research items. As a city council member, I would be expected to represent everybody in the city. I understand that this is a Democratic endorsement. My eyes are sort of being opened to the political process this year. But I'm not apologetic about recognizing that everybody in the community needs to be represented well. And actually, I think some of my support for the challengers, all four of the challengers, some of that support is because I don't care for the tactics that the people trying to defeat them are using. I'm a very big process guy. I like to see a good, clean fight. And I don't think I'm seeing that. And I'm proud of what I'm doing.
And there's a question that I will post to all the candidates. Did you support the two most recent school levies? Gary, you can go first on that.
Well, the two most recent school levies were both last year. And as a majority of the school district voters, so let me ask this first. Am I actually required to tell how I voted in secret?
You
Am I
don't have to.
obligated do that?
You can say that you choose not to tell us. It's just a question.
Yeah. So I'm not going to tell you how I voted, but I was very, I was very out there. I do my research. Again, I like to see a good, clean fight, a good, fair fight. I'm not against schools. I'm against reckless fiscal spending. I'm against a lack of disclosure and forthrightness. Those are my reasons for not supporting another levy. We spend more per student than just about anywhere else in the state. And that healthcare system, that healthcare plan, that Rolls Royce, in which the teachers really didn't have any skin in the game, that was a vestige from 1975 healthcare. And thank goodness the community put pressure to get that fixed. That was indefensible. And I'm proud of the research and the work I did and the messages I delivered. Thank you.
Josie?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? My internet.
Did you support the last two school levies?
Oh, yes, I did. I was a volunteer on the last levy campaign. I supported them. I worked to get them passed. Yes.
Thank you. Eric?
I worked on pretty much, I think in one capacity or another, every school issue from 92 to 2013. So I'd say even though I do not like the new stylized H that the district has on a lot of its materials, I don't like it from a graphic design standpoint. I don't like it from a historic standpoint. Despite my dislike for that H, I supported the last two issues. I told a member of the school board I might not, but I still supported it because of the H. He didn't see the humor in that, but I did.
Humor. I got the humor in that. All right. I have a civil rights question, which apparently I need to ask. Do you support full equal rights for the LGBTQAI plus members of our community? I would suggest this is a yes, no answer, but you could have 2 minutes. Order is Gary, then Eric, and then Josie.
Yes, I support human rights for everybody. Thank you.
Eric?
Yes.
Yes,
Josie?
yes.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat.
There was one from Jessica, and it looks like Harriet Applegate has had her hand raised for a while. I don't know if she still
Okay.
has a question.
Harriet, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The city council, the city most comparable to ours in the county, this week passed legislation to add 4 additional medium range electric charging stations, where the first 4 are located in parks. There's lines up for these. They also have a supercharger that is, there are always cars lined up for the supercharger, which I guess charges your car in 1 hour. The medium ones take 2, and they also have low level ones. I would like to hear each of the candidates opine about how you intend to drag Cleveland Heights, which is loaded with environmentally conscious citizens and voters, into the 21st century when it comes to energy and the environment.
Okay, Gary, do you want to go first on that, then Josie, and then Eric?
I'm happy to. Every decision the city makes needs to include sustainability in the equation. Like I said about the police cars that were bought this summer, I think the only sustainability question that came up was, during the discussion before it was voted on, and I believe Khalil Sarin asked, did we look into electric vehicles? And the question received I actually didn't watch it, I was told this. I believe the response, his question was given a very cursory, well, it would be too expensive type of answer. And then it passed. I don't know what the vote was, but it passed. So there was an opportunity to begin to start leading the way on sustainability, renewables, obviously charging stations, if they can serve both the city and the community. Of course, these are things we need to be doing. It's coming. It could have been here 20 years ago. We need to lead the way now on sustainability and renewability. Thank you.
Josie?
Yes, thank you. There are so many things that we can be doing. The first easy steps are, I would like to convene create a sustainability committee who will advise our city on everything that we can be doing and ways to get us there, not just in terms of transitioning our energy system, but also maintaining and also increasing our biodiversity, because that is our greatest tool for carbon capture, as well as preparing for climate impacts. As city council members, we will be planning for the future, but the future is all of what we know to be real and as that we can count on is very quickly changing. I would like to order a report from local environmental experts, as well as urban and population experts, so that we can know what's coming in 10, 15, 20 years, whether it's incoming population from climate refugees, increased precipitation, how do we handle flooding, all of these factors, how do we handle that our growing zones are changing. All of these things are things that we need to prepare for, and we can't prepare for them if we don't know what's coming. I am very proud to have received the endorsement from Tristan Rader in Lakewood, who's also working on these issues, and we are looking forward to working regionally, because the things that need to be done regionally are things that don't stop at city borders, and certainly climate change is something that does not stop at our city's border. And so we can be working regionally to build momentum and to build scale for climate initiatives, whether it's solar panel programs to make solar more affordable to homeowners, particularly trying to get it onto the homes of lower income people through any kind of subsidies that we can, because they would benefit them the most. We need to make sure that everything that we're doing with sustainability and regeneration is being done with a social justice mindset, to make sure that we are prioritizing lower income and marginalized communities, because they are on the front lines of climate change impacts.
Thank you. Eric?
I'm going to go a little bit off topic, but you mentioned electric charging stations, and it's sort of a pet thing I wish the post office was doing, because if the post office was pivoting to electric vehicles and had electric charging stations at every post office, that would accelerate adoption of that. So the reason that sort of segues back to where we're going because of your question is, if we're looking at any kind of project we have, if we're able to convince the property owner at Severance to do something with it, one of the things I would love to see is that, and theoretically it could be in any of the development sites too, if we included this as part of the infrastructure, it gives a motivation for folks who have a vehicle to charge to use it, as well as it puts Cleveland Heights, I'm always afraid of being bleeding edge, or I should say cutting edge, because if anyone who recalls the 4 footprint buildings we have in the school district, cutting edge can hurt you too. I like the idea of implementing technologies where we have these projects. I think that would be great. I know we did it when the high school project, the economics didn't work for solar on the roof, but we made the roof solar ready. So we could examine when we're looking at, again, if we go back to the economic development, looking at, if we're having large flat roofs, do we mandate that it has to be a solar assist array, or is it solar ready? I think that would definitely be an element for us to look when we're looking in regard to economic development. I'm almost out of time on that, but I apologize for using up at the post office, but that's a pet project I'd love to see them do, along with banking, because that would be a great thing too for the post office. But that's enough. I'm sorry, I'm out.
Thank you. Jen Holland has a question. Do you support Black Lives Matter and why? So we'll start with Gary on that.
Yes, I support Black Lives Matter, and I'm very proud to say that Kareem Hinton, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, is a very close friend and confidant of mine. The why part, because everybody deserves human rights.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I don't want to go into my own personal family history, but yeah, I mean, that kind of a question is like a bizarre litmus question that that's my ethos. I don't understand why I have to, I guess.
We're just not taking things for granted this week.
From watching,
Josie?
I understand.
Josie?
Yes, I support Black Lives Matter. And the reason why we say Black Lives Matter is because Black lives are the lives who are facing the greatest threat and are in the most danger. And so we need to make sure that we are pointing that out, and so that we can protect them, and so that we can end the injustices that have been happening to Black lives for centuries. And when we say Black Lives Matter, that's when we can begin the work of anti-racism.
Thank you, Josie. Mario, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, good evening. My question is for all the candidates. The reason why it's important to say to ask those questions is because, again, we find ourselves in predominantly white spaces making decisions for all of us, which includes Black people. And it should not be assumed that liberal spaces are inherently not racist. And that's very important to bring out, and especially for people of color. The dangers of racism do not exist just with people in white cloths chanting against marginalized people. They often exist in the microaggressions and the biases, implicit and explicit, that exist in white liberal spaces as well. My question for the candidates is, what in your career and lived experience has worked to improve the quality of the lived experience for Black people?
Josie, do you want to start with that?
I think that one of the things that very well-intentioned liberals like to do is speak for Black people. And I think that's, and I realize the irony of, 3 white candidates coming up here, but what I want is to elevate Black voices. I want to, and quite frankly, I want to see more Black faces on council. I want to see Black people and people of color coming into positions of authority. It's not enough to have a seat at the table. We need to make sure that their voices are heard at the table, and that we are centering their experiences. And so, and this is coming from someone who I can talk anyone's ear off, but I really find that what I need to do a lot of the time is shut up, and so that I can better understand what I am not seeing. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I don't have an answer that you're going to want to hear, because as a Jew who grew up in a Catholic neighborhood, who attended an integrated school, whose godparents were a mixed race or a interracial couple whose 2 biracial children I babysat for 6 years, I just view, I'm sorry, I view everyone, I'm not gonna have an answer for you that you're gonna want to hear, but because you're looking for specifics.
No, Mr. Silverman, I just want to make clear,
Yeah.
my question is, what in your career experience has worked to improve the quality of the lived experience for Black people?
My career has been, the reality is my career has been a job to pay my rent and to pay for groceries. It hasn't been, I haven't had the luxury or the opportunity to have jobs that allowed me or afforded me the opportunity to do public service or public good. I've done that in my personal life. That is what I have done. I look at one of the biggest accomplishments, or I shouldn't say accomplishments. I mean, we can look at the school board was great. I enjoyed doing school board. The best thing is the spring, when you slog through the year, in the spring, all the award ceremonies are awesome. But the nicest thing or the best thing I can directly say would have been giving out scholarships to kids at the Alumni Foundation, and just, reading the applications and seeing, the joy folks would have that, here's money to help you go on to college and things like that. That's the most direct example I can give. But my jobs haven't given me that opportunity, other than when I worked for the Girl Scouts in product sales, helping them sell Girl Scout cookies. I didn't sell the cookies, I helped support them. But that would be it. I haven't had job opportunities that afforded me that. So I know it's not the answer maybe you're looking for, but that's what I got. I'm sorry.
I'm just looking for an answer. I appreciate what you said. Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. In my work life, basically, as far as equality goes, Black people goes, I try to lead by example. So in my work life, if I was interviewing for a job, certainly everybody was welcome to interview. If I'm sitting in the lunchroom and people start telling bad jokes, I like to think I'm the guy that said, this is not the place for that. It's not appreciated. Sometimes all you can do is just do your best, be cognizant. Certainly, I have not lived the life and don't understand the barriers for a Black person in America. I'm tremendously empathetic. Obviously, I have never lived that experience. But you just do your best and lead by example. And as an activist, I was a regular citizen participant in the Cleveland police reform consent decree. And Mario, you may remember that night I got up there when they had appointed yet another white male lawyer to the Citizen Police Commission. And I got up there and said, oh, well, apparently, half of the city is either white male lawyers or police officers, because this is out of 6 out of 13 on this supposedly diverse committee. So it wasn't my work life. Well, it was my activism life, and I did what I could.
So we have one more question in the chat, Gary, that asks about social media presence. So there are pros and cons to being a large presence on social media. Being on city council is a nonpartisan role. If you were elected to city council, how would you change the way you use your social media presence to be more of an effective advocate for all in Cleveland Heights?
Well, the difference between a private citizen and an elected official, I think, can best be summarized by Shirley Chisholm, who said, if they won't give you a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair. And when I first became an activist, I actually thought my input would be welcomed by City Council, and I thought my input would be welcomed by the school board. I mean, golly, it was so well researched and so logical, and I'm such a likable guy. Well, it turned out I was mistaken. That's not really how the world works. And instead, you use the tools that are available. And so in my case, in the old days, I would have been the guy standing on a corner on a soapbox, screaming and waving flyers around. And fortunately, now we have social media, we have the internet, and I'm able to communicate my ideas and the information I've gathered and my thoughts via social media. But if I'm elected to council, all of a sudden I have a seat at the table, and I shouldn't need to express myself via social media. I should be able to express myself in a council meeting to the 6 colleagues in a way that is intended to influence in a positive manner.
Thank you. We're not going to have our closing statements from the candidates. You have 1 minute to do your closing statement, and the order for this will be first Josie, then Gary, and then Eric. Josie?
All right, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for all of your thoughtful and really incisive questions this evening. There is a lot at stake in this election. We have so much work to do here in Cleveland Heights, and so many issues are complex and intersectional. Nothing can be solved in a soundbite, and there are no easy silver bullet solutions. However, we do have what it takes to rise to this challenge, but we need our leaders to be unified in our commitment to developing solutions and building progress. We need our council to do more than come to the table with ideas. We also need to be able to engage in the kind of dialogue that doesn't treat disagreements as confrontations, but rather opportunities to make plans stronger through the inclusion of diverse perspectives. And this is the kind of work I really love doing. I am ready to join our city council and build a sustainable, equitable, and community-led Cleveland Heights. And I would be honored to earn the endorsement of the Cleveland Heights Democrats. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Josie. Gary? Gary, you're on mute.
I was that guy. Thank you. I proudly stand on my record of progressive good government activism over the last 10 years. There can be no debate that the issues I have raised, too numerous to list here, but available on my campaign website, and the changes that have been affected by them have been for the betterment of the city and the school district. With a seat on city council, I can be even more effective. I've asked myself, what would have happened if I hadn't notified the city of the city's own charter's requirement to hold this election for the remainder of Mary Dunbar's term? The only answer I come up with is that we, the people, would have been disenfranchised by our very own city government, no matter what their excuses. No one else anywhere on the ballot did that, not even the city council incumbents. And no one here is honestly surprised that I was the one who did it. I'm confident in saying I've earned your endorsement vote tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Eric?
I will thank Gary for his effort. I will give him that. I'm gonna look. I'm terrible at small talk. I'm not a politician. I am not a firebrand, nor am I an ideologue. I just want to bring 30 years of engagement, 19 years of experience. And yeah, I really shouldn't be doing this. I have really more important things. I hate to say my father's health is, I should be doing other things, but I believe in Cleveland Heights. And I want to bring that knowledge that I've gained and gleaned over the last 30 to 40 years to council to affect change, because all I hear from people is they want things done. And those who know me, hey, I to a degree have a reputation like Gary. I got a big mouth. I'm not going to sit and rubber stamp stuff. And I think there's value in that. flip side is, I'm not as much of I don't shoot from the hip like I used to. But I'm hoping that I could have your support. That would be awesome. And that would be it. And Gary, I will give you props. I'm looking at the screen here. You were right. You're right.
Okay, thank you very much to our candidates, both the candidates for mayor and the candidates for city council. And before we proceed with the report of the screening committee, I want to ask that the Zoom host please check to be sure that only members remain on the Zoom for the next phase of our meeting.
Okay, I need the person who is 216-973-4739 to identify themselves. You can unmute. If you are not a current dues paying member.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi.
It's Susan Ephraimson. Sorry, my
Oh.
phone's been glitching all night.
Oh, okay. All right.
Linda, it's Jessica Cohen. I have a quick question. I may have missed this, but can you just explain, is there the reason the other candidates for this seat are not here is because they declined to participate or they weren't registered Democrats?
Are we set, Sue?
Not yet.
Linda, you didn't answer.
Linda, Jessica had a question for you.
Jessica, you had a question about the other Democrats who are running for the city council seat. We invited all 5 Democrats. One of them did not respond to 2 emails, a text message, and a phone message. One of them I did have a conversation with, but she was uncertain whether rules at her work allowed her to seek a partisan endorsement. So she wasn't able to participate.
Thanks
That was
so
her
much. I
choice.
didn't even know they were Democrats or not, so that's why I was asking. So thanks
There
so much.
also are some people running who are not Democrats. I think there might be 3, maybe 4 non-Democrats running, but we reached out to all 5 registered Democrats.
So I'm still double checking, so hang in there.
Yeah, take your time. Yeah, so what we're doing at this point is we are identifying to stay on the Zoom people who are voting members of our club, which means that they are registered Democrats who are current in dues. So if you don't fit that category, we have to ask that you depart at this point. We can put you in the waiting room and you can come back on when we.
Is that what you want me to do, is to put everybody in the waiting room?
If they're not a voting member. And then they could leave if they want to, but they can also hang around if they want. So please see the question that I just put in the chat for you. Thank you for your patience while we do this. I know you all understand why it's important that we only have members voting.
Nice meeting. And same old people.
Oh, this is, should I really sit into?
If you're on the Zoom, please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
I'm checking on some of the registration. I just need a minute.
Sure, take your time. And while we're waiting for that, let me just remind folks that we have our social event on October 19th. We hope you'll all join us for that, which is an opportunity for you to see other members in an outside location and talk to some of our candidates, our Democratic candidates. There will not be a formal program. There will not be speeches. It's a social event. So we hope you'll join us for that. And if you're going to attend, please register for that event using the link in the emails that Al has been sending out. If you've missed that, you can go on the website and do that. And then also just a reminder about the event that is happening at the high school. The high school students are going to conduct a candidate forum for the school board candidates on October 21st. And Jen, I think you dropped the link for that in the chat earlier, but maybe you could put it in again.
Okay.
Sandra Moran asked a question. Yeah, that the criteria for voting includes that you're a resident of Cleveland Heights, you're a registered Democrat, and you have paid current dues for Cleveland Democrats. If anybody has any question about their status, you could drop me a note in the chat, or you can unmute yourself.
I think we're good.
There's a question in the chat about somebody who was moved to the waiting room.
Where? I don't see it. I'm sorry.
It's for Evan Garr, G-U-A-R-R.
Okay.
That's misspelled as G-A-R-R. And
Oh, okay.
so
I'll let him back in.
he paid dues. Yeah, he paid dues on October 6th, so he can vote.
It wasn't that. I had an incorrect spelling of his last name.
Okay. Okay.
All right, we should be good.
So the people who are in the waiting room are supposed to be in the waiting room, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience, everybody. So we're going to proceed now with the report of the screening committee. So the screening committee conducted interviews with the candidates and reviewed the questionnaires. All of the candidates we're considering tonight did participate in the interviews, which are optional. For mayor, our screening committee convened a couple of weeks ago to discuss the candidates for mayor. Our decision was to recommend endorsement for Khalil Sarin. For city council, we also had a meeting to discuss the city council candidates who are seeking the recommendations tonight. Our decision was to recommend endorsement for Eric Silverman. We believe he has a strong record of public service in the city, and his depth of experience on both the school board and the library board for many years will bring a valuable set of skills to a city council that will include a majority of members new to the type of leadership role that city council has. We will now open the floor for discussion. Any member of the club can make a comment. If you would like to comment, please use the Zoom function to raise your hand, and please limit your comments to 30 seconds. Jessica.
So it's not about this, just Susan Ephraimson texted me that she believes she paid in time. So if somebody could just check that, I just
I
wanted to.
responded to you in a private
Oh.
message.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Look, take a look.
Does anybody else, Sherry, I see you wanted to speak.
I would. I just wanted to say that I'm so excited about Josie Moore, and I really hope that she does win endorsement from this group. I am concerned at how often in our community we go back to familiar folks instead of embracing some of the exciting opportunities for new leadership in our community. And I think that Josie represents all of the progressive values of the Democratic Party, and she will be an asset to this community, particularly in City Council. So I do hope people consider endorsing her tonight. I strongly, strongly support her.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Linda.
I would. Joy Roller.
Joy, go ahead.
Yeah, I endorse what the previous speaker just said. Frankly, I would like to see a young woman with new ideas and energy for the city. I think Josie spoke very well tonight. I think her emphasis on sustainability is terrific. And I just really hope that we would consider her. I think her comments tonight far surpassed the other two. And I really want to endorse her. Thank you.
Linda?
Chrissy Gallagher. You can unmute yourself.
I didn't mean to raise my hand. I was just giving a clap because I agree with what was just said.
Okay, Maria?
I just wanted to say you should identify the members of the selections committee or the endorsements committee.
I did that earlier, but I'm happy to do it again. The members of the screening committee included Sue Dyke, Jen Holland, Steve Ingalls, Rob Rivera, Julian Rogers, and Maria Wilkinson, and we owe them all a big debt of gratitude. Khalil? Khalil, did you have something you wanted to say? Melody? You're muted.
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm definitely in favor of Khalil Saran. I think he has the experience in the county, and he has an economic development background, including economic development finance. I think he has the experience that will help him be a very good mayor.
Thank you. Rosa, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's clear by my questions earlier, I support Khalil Saran for mayor, but as to the council race, I just want to point out that Melody Hart will retain her seat and Davida Russell is up for re-election. But given that Josie would be the third woman to be on the council. If we elect another man in this unexpired term, the council's gender balance will be 5-2. So I just wanted to point that out in the interest of getting a diversity of voices running our city.
Thank you. Khalil, did you want to say something? Your hand is up and I don't know if you wanted to make a comment or if it's up from before. Or...
I did. Can you hear me now? I was having some
Yes.
mic problems. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to express my support for Josie Moore in this endorsement process. I think that she has been consistent with our values. She's been outspoken, and I think that her taking the initiative to jump into this arena in the way that she has, I think is impressive and bold, and I appreciate that as well. But I think that the emphasis on that communication piece, the emphasis on finding common ground and being sort of a steady hand, but with bold ambition, is an important combination that I think we need on the council. I think she would be a fine complement to next year's council.
Robin, did you want to say something?
Yes, I have two comments. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
One of the things I think Josie does add to council is actually new eyes. And I think new eyes are good eyes, that sometimes we do things the way we've always done them. And we need to think differently. And so I think her newness to the community is actually an asset. My second comment is about Barbara Dansford, and we never really got into her comment about Jews being the money folks in the community. And number one, that's really offensive to me because I'm just a retired school teacher and I think I represent actually more of the Jewish community than what she's talking about. And I just want to say that that comment of hers was really offensive, and I don't know why we never addressed it. I guess I can blame myself for not bringing it up.
Barbara, did you want to say something?
Absolutely, I want to say something. I want to be crystal clear. I never said that. Wherever that story came from, it is false. I would never say that. I have never said that. And so I am offended that that comment has even been attached to my name.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands. Michael Bennett?
Thank you, Linda. I want to jump on the Josie bandwagon. I also want to endorse Barbara Danforth. When I envisioned a mayor working so hard in issue 26 to create this office, she's the kind of person I had in mind, who had the experience, the knowledge, the personality, the ability to come in and on day one be ready to run the city, build collaborations, work with council, work with stakeholders, work with people outside of our city to help make our city better. And I fully endorse her, and full disclosure, I'm working to help get her elected because I think she meets the qualifications that I anticipated our first mayor would have back when we passed issue 26. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so we're going to move on to the voting on the endorsements for the mayoral and city council races. So Sue, just to confirm, the people in the room are only voting members, right?
I have a question that I'd like to go offline with.
Okay.
With you, like, could you put yourself on mute and give me a call?
Sure.
Sorry to be,
All right. So I think we're ready to start the vote. So please be sure that you vote for only one candidate in each of the races. So there's going to be on your ballot both the mayoral race and the city council race. And I think we're ready now for the ballot.
So there will actually be 3 ballots. This is how Al set it up.
Okay.
So I'm going to launch the one for the City Heights, Cleveland Heights City Council, finishing the 2-year term vacated by Mary Dunbar. So you can only vote for one.
Thank you. Al, I don't see a ballot on my screen.
I have to take you off as a co-host.
Yes, please do that.
Okay.
And Linda, you might have to hang up and rejoin once she takes you off as a co-host.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
You see it?
No.
Okay, you'll probably have
Yeah.
to come back in.
I'll leave and come back.
Audrey, there should be a poll that you should be able to see. Do you not see it?
I do not.
If you want, you can text me or message me your vote if you want to do that.
Or do you see, are you on the phone? Audrey?
Yes, I'm on my phone.
Okay, on the right-hand side, if you are you in the app, just to confirm?
Yes, I'm in the Zoom app.
Okay, on the right-hand side, there should be 3 little dots that says more. Do you see that?
Yes. Okay. That's helpful. That might help other people too. Thank you.
No problem. You got the poll?
So we have 71 of 74 who have voted. We'll give it another minute or two. Not a minute, but about 30 seconds.
Audrey, are you able to see it now?
Yes, I have. And thank you for that instruction.
Okay, there's 2 people who haven't voted. That one would be me. Okay, we'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay, I am now going to go to, this is for candidate for mayor. You have 3 options. You may pick one. I'll go launch the poll now. Okay, it looks like everyone has voted. We have 72 out of 74, which is what we had last time. So I'm going to give it 10 more seconds and then end the poll. Okay, and the next poll
Can you show the poll results?
Well, it's it's for the approval of the nominating committee.
Yeah.
You
So
wanna
I
explain
thought
that?
we would wrap up the endorsements first because I recognize that some of the people on this call don't care about our vote to approve the nominating committee.
Okay.
I want to be respectful of people's time.
Okay.
It's a long night. Right,
Yeah.
Jen?
Hang on one sec.
2.5 hour meeting.
Yeah, it's a long meeting. Covered a
Okay.
lot.
Give me 1 second here.
But I think these meetings are important, and I think we had some good discussion, and I appreciate the input in the chat, the participation of so many of our members.
So do you want me to send you the results, or do you want me to announce them?
You can announce them.
Okay.
They are what they are.
Okay. So for the Cleveland Heights City Council 2-year term, we do have an endorsement with 60% of the vote is Josie Moore.
Okay, and what are the percentages, please?
All of them, or?
Yes.
Okay. Cantor, 14%, Moore, 60%, Silverman, 21%, no endorsement, 6%.
Okay, thank you. You can go on.
And let's see, for mayor, we do have an endorsement for Khalil Sarin with 63%, Barbara Danforth, 31%, no endorsement, 7%.
Okay. Thank you very much. Congratulations to those who have achieved the endorsement. We appreciate participation by all the candidates. We will issue an announcement to our mailing list. And I appreciate it if members could stay on quickly just for a few minutes. We're going to do our nominating committee approval. We have election of officers and trustees coming up. So this is just to vote for the nominating committee. Our meeting for officers and trustees is at the November meeting. We also will be proposing a few targeted amendments to our constitution and bylaws, including changing officer terms to 2 years. So we'll be circulating details on that this week. The proposed slate for the nominating committee includes Harriet Applegate, Jen Holland, JJ Costello, Craig Kluge, and Maria Wilkinson. Can I have a motion to approve the slate, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the nominating committee.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a second. Okay, please launch the poll. And let me say thank you again.
I have a question, Linda. Does this require a 60% vote?
No, majority vote. But thank you for asking. Thank you all for joining us tonight and sticking on through the call. I appreciate it. And I thought it very interesting, and I hope that you do too.
I'm assuming I can share this.
Yes. Okay.
Linda, this is Mario. I just have a point that I'd like the club to consider for, well, hopefully we can start meeting in the near future, but in person. But I have learned just anecdotally and also using Zoom today in school with students that Zoom polls round percentages. And so if you were to get, say, 59.6% of a vote, it rounds it up to 60%. Whereas if we were in a, if we were doing this live and we had the number of people divided by the total, or the number of votes divided by the total number of people, if that percentage ended up being 59 something, it wouldn't have achieved 60%. And so it might be better for us in setting up the polls to be able to see the whole numbers to ensure that candidates are authentically receiving 60%. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. We'll certainly take that into consideration for future. We appreciate it. It's been, an interesting election season. This is the first time people have been using polls in Zoom for these sorts of things. So we've all learned a lot about Zoom as we've gone through the process, but thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you, Linda.
Bye-bye.